Hello. I'm delighted to introduce Roy Williams, a playwright who has received a multitude of awards, including the George Devine Award and the 2001 Evening Standard Award for Most Promising Playwright. His work has been presented at major theatres such as the National Theatre, the Royal Shakespeare Company, Royal Court, as well as at smaller scale and regional venues. Roy was awarded an OBE in the 2008 Honours List, and despite all these accolades, he still finds time to support and mentor young playwrights. His early plays were concerned with the issues related to first and second generation immigrants in Britain, and he moved on to dealing with the construction of a British identity under a black perspective and current configurations of the British nation. Some of his most well-known plays are Sucker Punch, Sing Your Heart Out for the Lads, Lift Off and Fallout. I should also mention that he's going to be giving the Jocelyn Herbert Lecture in March next year, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing his talk today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. The night is beautiful, so the faces of my people. The stars are beautiful, so the eyes of my people. Beautiful also is the sun. Beautiful also are the souls of my people. For those that don't know, that's a short poem, My People, written by Langston Hughes. Please forgive the self-indulgence, but Langston Hughes is one of my favourite writers, and I use any excuse I can to quote his wonderful words. Good evening, by the way. When I was less than 2 years old, living in Birmingham, my parents had finally decided to end their marriage. My father, who I was named after, went to live in America, and I never saw or heard from him again until almost 40 years later. I didn't know at the time, but my father leaving and the rest of my family returning to London helped to define me, to become the writer that I am, to be one of the reasons why I'm standing in front of you now. One of my earliest childhood memories was being carried upstairs by my older sister Karen to our new home on a council estate in West London, 23 Dombey House, Henry Dickens Court, St Anne's Road, London, West 11, 4DW. The reason why I'm emphasising like that is because I was the youngest of 4 children growing up in that 3-bedroom flat. My eldest brother Mark had one room to himself, my mother Gloria and my sister Karen shared the other, and myself and older brother Carl had the room that was left. The fact that we're all living in the flat was too small for us is not the story I want to tell. I'm just painting the first of many pictures for all of you this afternoon. In spite of the small home, I spent a great deal of time growing up there on my own. Mark had married, was living on the other side of London, Karen was flat sharing with a couple of college friends just off Ladbroke Grove, and Carl was doing what most guys his age were doing, being young, having fun, and on more than one occasion being stopped and searched by the police. Mum was working in a nursing home, which meant more often than not she had to work on sociable hours, so I was left with a babysitter, a long series of them, who would plonk me in front of the television to keep me quiet. Over the years, I would watch everything, and I mean everything. Crossroads, Love Thy Neighbour, World in Action, Sale of the Century, Here Come the Double Deckers, The Banana Splits. But it was not a passive experience. I would mimic the actors' voices. I would reenact scenes from Poldark, the original series. I would even write scenes that I saw in shows like The Professionals, Shoestring, Bergerac, The Sweeney, Minder. I would write entire episodes and send them to the show's producers, insisting I could do better. I wouldn't say that experience gave birth to my creativeness, but rather it helped to unlock the creative door that was already there in my head. I got into the habit of always asking questions about everything. One of the first I found myself asking was, why are we all living in a low-rise block of flats called Dombey? Who or what is a Dombey? In fact, who is Henry Dickens? And why is the entire estate named after him? Was he a big deal back in the day or something? Does this Henry Dickens have anything to do with the man who wrote Oliver Twist? Because his name is Dickens as well. Is Charles Dickens related to Henry Dickens' mum? Henry was his son, was my mother's quick, irritable reply. What book are you reading, Mum? It looks thick and big. David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. That's funny. The block opposite ours is called Copperfield House. What are you reading now, Mum? Nicholas Nickleby. Nickleby House is where my mate Tony lives. And next to that is Pickwick House. And next to that is Marley House. And opposite from that is Dorrit House. And over there is Oliver House. So if I read all of those Charles Dickens books, Mum, would I find the names of those houses in them? Yes, was a very quick and this time really impatient reply. Already, my visual surroundings, as well as understanding that council estate, were beginning to play a massive influence on my playwriting life, even before I knew I wanted to be a playwright. Now, I understand this is a symposium about theatre designers, but may I allow myself to sidestep a little, because another major cultural influence on me was to be a children's television programme, or more specifically, this children's television programme. Any guesses? Someone? Thank you, thank you. I was at home in the kitchen or something, having my dinner probably after coming home from school when I heard that theme tune. For the first time in my life, coming from the living room, I didn't quite know why, but there was something about it that made me want to stop eating my dinner and rush from the kitchen to see what programme it was. I'd never heard the theme before, and because it was the first episode of the show, thousands of other kids my age felt the same. It was a show that everyone in the school playground was talking about the following day. The show had a special meaning for me because I had seen him. The opening scene of the show was this young black boy dressed in jeans carrying a football, looking and sounding like me and all of my mates I grew up with, going to a run-down, greyish-looking school that looked exactly like our school. I had seen black people on the television before, but it was the first time I had seen myself. The portrayal of Benny Green, beautifully played by the late and great Terry Sue Patt, was, I suppose you could say, the first time a piece of art directly spoke to me. The character of Benny Green, and most importantly, the surroundings and cultural as well as aesthetic settings, made me feel that I existed, that I mattered, that the world I came from, that I would eventually be writing about, mattered too. I was now ready to write my first play, The No Boys Cricket Club. Directed by Indy Rubasingham and designed by Rosa Majora. Now I knew what was exciting my inner writer's voice, but I felt an urge to write about where I first came from before starting to explore where I wanted to go. Hence this tale, following the lives of two middle-aged West Indian women living in London. Their lives are full of disappointment and disillusionment. They hark back to a time when they were filled with excitement and hope about their future. For them, this is when, as teenagers in Kingston, Jamaica, they formed the No Boys Cricket Club. Dramatically, the opportunity arises for them in present-day London to revisit their lives and meet their younger selves. The theatrical potential of my play was apparent to the Theatre Royal Stratford East at the time. A new play with a magical quality, but based on what I'd hoped were real characters were thrilling to them. A remembered world is juxtaposed with a grittier present-day London, so that the two characters, one younger and the other much older, could meet on stage. The game of cricket was being used as a metaphor for dreams, strength, and the rediscovery of self. For Rosa, the designer, all I had to give her was a premise of a woman literally escaping to the past with her best friend as well as two settings. The backyard of the main character, Abby's terraced house in East London, and then the sandy white beaches of 50s Kingston, Jamaica. In the production of at Theatre Stratford East, I will never forget the sound of gasps from the audience when the London backyard flips down and the stage changes for the first time from contemporary grey London to the magical beach in Kingston Town, Jamaica. As one audience member told Rosa, "Thank you, you took me back home." I was not quite done with the past as I began to work on my second play, Starstruck, again set in Jamaica. But this time in the 70s, Starstruck, like the No Boys Cricket Club, dealt with themes of the past. But unlike No Boys, it dealt with a generation of West Indians, a family who did not follow the Windrush generation and came over for a better life. On the set, again by the amazing Rosa Majora, it is an evocative design full of corrugated iron of a poverty-stricken backyard, splashed with red flowers, a pile of crates, a tackled-together chicken coop, and an old beaten-up Humber Hawk-looking car, all there to strengthen the theme of aspirations and responsibility as they pitted against each other during the course of the 2-hour play. After Starstruck, I was ready to start writing about worlds I felt were familiar to me, and also worlds I was struggling to see reflected anywhere else in drama. Liftoff, performed at the Royal Court Theatre upstairs at the Ambassador's Theatre in 1999, follows the relationship between Mal and Tone, two teenagers, black and white, respectively, in West London. In this piece, I wanted to investigate at the time the current fashions for being black and what the reality of that actually meant. Mal is a cool black guy on the estate. Tone speaks black and dresses black. I wanted to show how little space there is in urban London at the time to generally define yourself and respect your own identity. Liftoff was also a very important lesson for me in terms of working with designers. During my initial meeting with both the designer Oltz and director Inda Rubasingham, I told them quite vividly how I imagined the play existed in my mind, which was a playground, a hangout where the two primary characters, both unemployed with little future, would spend their time. I saw swings, slides, roundabouts. On the first day of rehearsals, when Oltz presented a black box, I saw none of that. Just a raised, long, grey slab, which the entire audience would sit around and the actors would jump up and down from to perform. I was shocked, I was disappointed and let down. My vision of the piece was completely ignored. What they had was never going to work. I think it was during the week of technical rehearsals was when I could not stop apologising enough to both Inda and Oltz for such a negative response. Because what they captured was an exciting, thrilling, almost gladiator arena experience as the characters would fight as well as mentally duel on the raised slab. The audience was caught up in the action, forced to explore what it means to be British as well as themselves. It was brilliant. Swings, slides and roundabouts would have just gotten in the way. What was I thinking? That experience made me learn as well as understand that designers cannot simply replicate what is inside a playwright's head. They must take what they can from the playwright's mind, make it their own. I promised myself not to be as prescriptive with my plays ever again. Well, almost. It was the year 2000. I was in a Birmingham pub watching the European Championships, England versus Germany. The pub I found to watch the game seemed nice, relaxed and friendly. But all of that was soon changed within 5 minutes before the kick-off, when a bunch of young lads came storming in. England fans, of course. Most were already drunk, all were very loud. Their macho, loud, racist manner to the German players completely changed the atmosphere of the pub. They never said anything, but I was waiting for them to say something about the black players. A step too far, perhaps, but I knew, as well as feel, that they wanted to, but were unable to. The game had finished. England had won 1-0, Alan Shearer with a peach of a header in the 53rd minute. I was pleased England got the result they wanted, but those lads have spoilt things a little for me. It got me asking, what is it that makes a football match bring out the worst in the English? As well as that, I had my writing head on. I then found myself asking, bunch of England fans, watching a match, in a closed space, a play? I'd always wanted to write a piece that explored nationalism. Could this be it? I knew that England were going to play Germany again later in the year for the World Cup qualifiers for 2002. It was also to be the last game played at the old Wembley Stadium before it got knocked down and replaced. I decided, whatever the result of what happened on that day, I would write the play around it. The only thing I said to Anthony Lamble, the first designer for the show, was, it's set in a pub, southwest London. In fact, that was all I needed to say. Anthony did the rest. At the Black Box Invader on the first day of rehearsals, Anthony had vividly, with such great precision, given a production of a classic replica of a southwest London public house. Pool tables, a huge long draping television screen, the works. It was so real and authentic that one of the actors told me this story. That even though the beers that the cast and the characters had to drink in the pub was not real, coloured water or something, they were required to drink vast quantities of the stuff to maintain the illusion there were England fans watching the game. During one particular scene, one of the actors was desperate to go to the toilet. He had worked out in his head how long he had before he spoke his next line. It was roughly about 10 minutes. Even though the play required all of the cast members to remain on stage, the actor got up, walked to the part of the set that represented the gents' toilets, stepped in, all of this in complete character. As soon as he was behind the stage, he ran like lightning to the nearest loo, relieved himself, came back running back on stage, back in character, in time to be ready for his cue to deliver the next important line. For those that don't know, Sing Your Heart Out for the Lads leads to a tragic ending, which involves the violent death of one of the main characters, and the window has been smashed by an angry mob outside. The design of the play, when it was brought back to the larger space of the Cottesloe, now known as the Dorfman, allowed for some members of the audience to be actually sitting in the pub, almost next to the cast. As one of the Brooks came flying in, a gentleman in one of those seats truly believed there was a riot and jumped out from his seat and began to protest. One of the most realistic sets ever of one of my plays, and so effective. What it was that got me going with Sing Your Hearts Out for the Lads was continuing to run around in my brain as I was looking for inspiration and a way into the world I wanted to write about in Fallout. Inspired loosely on the awful murder of a 10-year-old Damilola Taylor who was stabbed to death on the stairwell of his council estate in Peckham back in the year 2000. For me again, it was about the world and these characters I had not seen enough to my satisfaction anywhere in drama. I found my way in when I was able to get access to some of the transcripts from the murder trial. And what struck me was this young 12-year-old girl who allegedly had eyewitnessed the murder, going up against a white male 60-plus-year-old judge in the courts of the Old Bailey. Neither one of these people had any knowledge of the other one's worlds, so inevitably they would clash. I was lucky as well as thrilled to be working with Oltz again, and I conveyed my thoughts on the design to himself and the director Ian Rickson. What Oltz had come back with truly blew my mind. His vision for the set resulted in the entire stalls of the Royal Court being ripped up, raised and staged, much like what he'd done with Liftoff 4 years previously, and have the entire audience in a round. It was like a gladiatorial arena again, bit but bigger, widescreen. Some members of the audience would find themselves almost caged in like chickens. Oltz and Ian had taken what I said about these worlds, knowing nothing about each other, and colliding and taking it one step further. The young, aggressive-looking group of black youths that were at the centre of the play were also the kinds of people that the mostly white audience who'd come to see the play would cross the street to avoid, making sure they were held onto their handbags and belongings tightly. The point of Oltz's brilliant set was to trap these people with those kids. There was no getting out. They were staying in their seats, and they were going to listen to these young people whether they liked it or not for the duration of the play. No interval. Those decisions by Oltz captured almost everything of what I wanted to say about that piece. It was all in the design. It was to be another 7 years before I was allowed to inflict my worlds onto the stages of the Royal Court again. At the time, I was struggling as well as wondering what I wanted to write about next. There was a documentary on the television about the 80s, like it was a long time ago, when I felt it was only yesterday for me. I was 12 years old when it started, and 22 when our decade neared the end. So much had happened to me during that time, most of which helped to define the man I am now. I remember also as a kid that black sportsmen, particularly footballers and boxers, were my role models. None more so than the likes of Sugar Ray Leonard, Laurie Cunningham, Viv Anderson, and of course the greatest of them all, Muhammad Ali. His strong talk and aggressive blackness to some was truly an inspiration to me. It was poetry. I wanted to probe myself more into the debates of the codes of blackness. Who's blacker than who? What does black even mean? I was struck by the rivalry that existed between Frank Bruno and Lennox Lewis, two of our finest and high-profile black boxers we had then. Frank Bruno grew up in southwest London, adopting the accent and manner of the common working-class white man. Lennox Lewis was born here but grew up in Canada before returning to England with his family. The two men traded blows with each other in the media. Lewis went below the belt when he accused Bruno of being an Uncle Tom. Once again, the notion of blackness came racing to the surface, as well as the greed is good culture. The drama of this piece was right in itself. I had no elaborate imaginings in my head regarding the design, just merely a boxing gym was all that I conveyed to the genius mind that belongs to Miriam Buther. Once again, the stalls of the Royal Court were ripped up, only this time to make way for a full-scale boxing ring, bought from the famous Repton Club in the East End, where the likes of the Cray twins used to train. The audience were made to feel like they were attending a boxing bout, but Miriam was not done there. The entrance walls to the theatre were entirely covered with pictures of boxers, past and present. Every available space, as well as the stage, was used to create the atmosphere of a fully working South London boxing gym. It was not just more than what I hoped for. The set design, which went on to win a well-deserved Best Set Design Award at the 2010 Evening Standard Theatre Awards, it more than exceeded my wildest dreams. I was told it was the most expensive set built in the history of the Royal Court Theatre. For Miriam Buford, it is something of a trademark for her to not just merely build sets, but transform the entire theatre as well. As Michael Billington said in his 2010 review of the play, under Miriam Buford's design, the court has been radically restructured around a boxing ring in which we see two young black fighters, played with precision by Daniel Kaluuya and Anthony Welsh, skipping, sparring and engaging in the title bouts. Far from being liberated, however, they remain pawns in a larger game. As someone points out, white people love nothing than to see two black men beat up on each other. I wanted to use the ring to create a fable about race and money, to show how Leon and Troy enjoyed the illusion of autonomy, but are ultimately at the mercy of promoters, for whom they're just meal tickets. Sasha Wares' thrilling direction and Miriam's world-class design and staging made the audience complicit in the process. If I may, I'd like to go back a few years to when I was commissioned by the Royal Court to write my third play, Fallout. Is when some theatre, particularly the Royal Court, would immediately recommission a writer regardless of how well or badly their first or previous play was received. It did not matter. It was assumed they would write another play. It was a done deal. There was trust. There was faith. So you can imagine my face when Ian Rickson told me that not only was I going to write another play, but it would be for the downstairs space. Ask any playwright what a big deal it is writing a new play for the Royal Court Theatre downstairs. It means your name, as well as your play, will be outside the building in big red lights. Not even a West End transfer of one of my plays can compete with that, said to me by one major leading playwright who will remain nameless. But the story I want to tell you is Ian taking me downstairs into the auditorium. It was in the morning, completely empty. We sat near the front and talked about various ideas and themes I was having in regards to this yet unwritten play. Ian had a meeting to go to and he invited me to stay in the auditorium for as long as I liked. Get a feel of it, the entire space. Let it inform as well as help me in terms of writing the play. That thinking has stayed with me ever since. Every play I've written since, I always allow myself to be informed by the space. I know it'll be informed by the space I know it'll be staged in, large or small. From that, fingers crossed, as well as toes, it informs the designer. I'd like to end, as I began, with a very short Langston Hughes poem. I've no idea if this was his point for the piece, but for me, it sums up a lot of what I feel about this crazy, maddening industry that most of us are crazy enough to be working in. Actors, directors, designers, producers, playwrights, theatre ushers, stage storekeepers, stagehands, dressers alike. It's called A Long Trip. The sea is a wilderness of waves, a desert of water. We dip and dive, rise and roll, hide and are hidden on the sea. Day, night, night, day. The sea is a desert of waves, a wilderness of water. Have a good evening very much.
So we've got time for some questions. Anybody got any questions so far? No, lots. Okay.
You talk a lot about the designers you worked with. I just wondered to what extent you had a choice in the designers you worked with, or whether they were always a given as part of the performance that was going on in that particular theatre.
I think early in my career, it was kind of like they were like given to me, and I just kind of went along with it. And but you know, as my sort of if you like stature grew, maybe I would have a say. But when you're working with people, I mean, people like Olks, who's in the room, Miriam, I mean, you're going to say no to them? You're just not.
Did you get Could you then choose them later on? Or don't you remember?
I don't know. No, early on, no. But again, I never. I try not to think too much about it. Writing the bloody plays are hard enough. So I just, I'm quite eager to give my play over to whoever's designed it. But like I said, when I'm working with people like Autumn and Miriam and Liz Clackham as well, and Rosa, it's their work and what they do and their vision speak for itself. I mean, it's just phenomenal, and working with people like that. So they make the job easy.
I've got a question for Orts actually. You're sitting in the back row. What was it like working with Roy?
I've always I take on a show if I think I'd like to spend time with the characters, and I realised that on Liftoff. I just thought I'd enjoy spending time with these characters, and I've used that as a kind of rule of thumb ever since. And what was it like working with? I didn't know you didn't like that first design.
No, because when I saw you earlier, I went, shit.
We had a bit of a playground
I
thing.
I very quickly got over myself.
You took me to the playground outside the court where it happened, and that didn't have any swings or anything in it. That was just like
it did when I was a kid. It did.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it did. Yes, yeah, no, yeah, you can, yeah, because you met my family. I remember that.
Yeah. But there was the same. The thing about why we did the slab was because, and remember, it was real concrete, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was right high, and it's because we had these 13-year-old boys with the stars in it, weren't they?
Yeah.
In the past. And the space had to be inhabited by them and by two of them who'd survived to the age 20. And one of them committed suicide.
Yeah.
So they were ghosts. So the space, the environment had to be something where ghosts could be there and present-day big guys, ghosts of children and present-day big guys.
Yeah.
I'd seen that play. It was a new theatre that had been built, hadn't it? While the Royal Court was.
Being refurbished.
Yeah. And I'd seen Mark Ravenhill's play, and just before that, and it was a seating bank that you looked down on, and I thought you couldn't make stars of 13-year-old boys fighting if you were looking down on it. So it had to be something that should. And then of course I put a railing round it, like in a zoo, like you can't touch these exhibits. You can't. And I put a London sky over it, and now the lights came through a huge white sheet. But I think if we'd done too much naturalistic stuff, the audience's minds couldn't go between the ghosts of the children and the big guys lounging around on railings. And
that's it. So to note to designers, don't listen to the playwright.
Yeah, but I tried to get into your head, didn't I? So I came to a place
I know.
Chatted to you all the time.
Any other questions?
Have you ever changed text on the advice of your designer? Adapted your text?
Slightly, yes. I think almost with pretty much. I think it's the last sort of 3 or 4 plays I had, but it's never been that sort of form. It's just like kind of what they say, and I just go, and I like that, so I change it just because I want to help them. I want to assist in their vision, but I never expect that. And like with Miriam's design for Sucker Punch, that was honest to God, that was more than I could possibly envisage what she did. Like I said, I just saw just a simple end on boxing gym with a ring there. I didn't expect her to pull the bloody seats out from the Royal Court and transform everything. I just went. It was so fantastic. I almost wanted to be sick because it was just brilliant. It was brilliant, really. It just it was.
You said there was this amazing transformation in the Stratford East play from London to the beach. How was that achieved? What was the set?
It was it was very very cunning, because on the curtain riser you just see the backyards, and once you kind of get into the flow of the play, you kind of think, oh, this is where the play is going to be all be set. The characters kind of come out, you got to know them, and then don't ask me how, because the characters, they just held each other's hands and literally took themselves back in time. No TARDIS or anything, they just did it with their minds and their will. And it was just quite simple, just the backdrop, kind of like this, was grey, and it just rose, and you just saw this beaming sunshine and this white beach, and the fence, which part of the backyard, just went down, just got pulled down, and then you saw it was incredible, and that's when we got the gasp moment from the audience. And I was there in the theatre when that elderly West Indian lady of the Windrush generation, made a point of introducing herself to me and then to Rosa, and then she said, thank you took me back home. And I just thought, yeah, that's all we need. That was a wonderful moment.
Roy, when you said Ian took you into the auditorium, and you always now go into the auditorium before. Do you think that's actually affected the way you write? Because when you started talking about a kind of direct relationship with your environment, and places. And now, do you think that's feeding into you sort of writing with a bit of a designer's head on a bit more now?
Yes, and I'm fine with that. I feel that's progression. I feel that I'm kind of going on that. But I because I teach younger writers, I always just say, know your space that you're writing for. Let it inform you. I go and see plays that they're going on stage where your play is going to be, and then again, like I said, let that inform you, and always have an awareness of. Importantly, is kind of think of everything. Think of the design, and also more importantly, think of the actors as well. The coming in, the coming off. If that's awkward for a small space, I would urge you to think about that. I just feel that the easier you make it for everybody, then I think the better your play will be served. Large, big space, large space, doesn't matter. But just always just think about always think about that, and surprise yourself, and let that sort of design surprise you. And I'm always been knocked down by. Last year I had a play on at the downstairs space at Hampstead, and I've seen other designs there, and what always surprised me is just how bigger it is than you think it is. So it's a very deceiving space. It looks pretty crummy and small, but I've seen some sort of genius moments there, and also I've seen a few productions at the Olivier, the National, and the more I go there, the more I realise actually, this is a very intimate space. Actually, whether last couple of shows there, I don't think it quite worked, but speaking overall, I've seen stuff. I just feel, wow, I feel much more intimate there as well.
We've heard a couple of people earlier on, Roy, talk about some playwrights that may not be considered visual, if you like.
Right.
I was wondering if you would describe yourself as a visual writer. And also, you were talking there about ripping up some of the seats from the Royal Court.
Yeah.
I was wondering, when you're writing the play, do you think in terms of the proscenium arch or the end-on frame, or is it the case that you are open to the adaptations?
I'm open. I've been to America a couple of times to see. So far, I've seen 2 productions of Sucker Punch done over there, and they're both very, very different from the Royal Court. In fact, one they heard about it and were very intimidated, and they kept on saying, "Look, I'm sorry, but we can't give you, we can't do what the Royal Court did." I said, "It's fine, it's your production, do it." And actually, one was almost in the round, like the Royal Courts. But what the court didn't have was a revolving stage, so they can move literally the ring around. So I thought, oh yeah, well you've got one up on the court there, and the one in Chicago was didn't have a proscenium arch, but it was end on, and so we had that the boxing room sort of kind of tucked in the corner. So that kind of works. Sorry, I know that answers your second question. My first question is, I do. I have, I like with the Royal Court. It's very much like that. I have sort of broad strokes to say, okay, it's a boxing gym, and then I just trust the designer to do their thing. They can't read what's in my mind, and I don't want them to. I really don't. But I want them to take it a stage further. I'm not a designer. I don't have that skill, that genius. So I'm kind of dependent on them to kind of serve the piece.
How do you keep your motivation when you're writing your plays?
YouTube. Seriously, I'm not joking. Sometimes too much. I just keep wanting to know more. I just keep wanting to, I'm like, it's almost like the journalist in me. I want to look for stories, and I want to look for things that sort of piss me off, and also more importantly, kind of like what I said in there. Less so. I mean, I've just been writing a play, which I'm still struggling to know what it's about. But where I started with it was because it's dealing with a bunch of characters I know exist in the world, but I've not seen them on stage in drama to my satisfaction. And I just want to do what I can to kind of correct that. So that keeps me going. I know those people exist. I've seen them, I've heard them. And I really think the rest of the world would benefit from hearing them and seeing them and engaging with them. So that's carrying me forward with a lot of work I do. Yeah, but and also themes and such that really kind of more or less write themselves. I mean, the estate where I grew up in, that is less than a 5-minute walk away from Grenfell Tower. So I knew that estate. I knew people who lived there when I was a kid. And I know that community very well, and it means a lot to me. And even though I live south, I was very much, like most people, I was very much affected by what happened. And I remember the next, because I went to visit my mum, and from her balcony, I could still see the building burning. And then I walked around the area, my ends, if you like to say, and there were hundreds of thousands of people around, as well as the TV cameras. And there's a little voice inside my head saying, Roy, you're going to write about this. And I was like, no, not the time, it's not appropriate. I know, I'll keep quiet. But we are going to write about it. And I am. So it's a bit of both of those.
Okay. Unfortunately, we've got to end now, but thank you very, very much for your talk.
Pleasure.